If you are over 60 and you have grown accustomed to stiffness in the morning, to the quickening of breath on a short flight of stairs, or to the steady reassurance from clinicians that age does this, then this opening minute is expressly for you. The title of this presentation is direct because the problem it addresses is urgent and tangible. Elevated cholesterol and persistent joint pain are two of the most common, most frustrating health complaints among adults in midlife and beyond. They erode quality of life slowly, often invisibly, until daily activities that once required no thought, walking the dog, climbing a single flight of stairs, reaching for a plate, become measured achievements. This video is not another catalogue of prohibitions or an evangelism of extreme regimens. It is a pragmatic, evidence-informed guide to 5 foods that, when used deliberately and consistently, can lower harmful cholesterol markers and meaningfully reduce the chronic inflammation that contributes to joint pain. My aim in the next several chapters is straightforward: to explain, with clarity and precision, why these foods matter, to outline the physiological mechanisms by which they act, and to provide concrete, realistic ways to incorporate them into an everyday life that is already busy and often constrained by preferences, budgets, or other medical conditions. This is not doctrinaire advice. It is a synthesis of what the best clinical nutrition research, population studies, and mechanistic laboratory work currently indicate. I will not promise cures. No single food erases long-standing disease, but I will show how specific nutrients and food patterns can shift a clinical trajectory, reduce risk factors, and deliver symptomatic relief for many people. Begin, then, with an honest statement. Cholesterol and joint pain are connected, and the connection is mediated principally by inflammation and oxidative stress. Over time, as metabolic resilience diminishes, so too does the body's capacity to detoxify oxidized lipids, to repair micro-injuries in connective tissue, and to maintain balanced immune responses in joint environments. Foods that reduce the concentration and particularly the oxidative modification of low-density lipoprotein, LDL, and foods that blunt chronic inflammatory pathways therefore exert a double benefit. They lower a key cardiovascular risk marker, and they reduce the inflammatory milieu that accelerates cartilage breakdown and heightens pain sensitivity. Throughout this series, I will use precise terminology: LDL, HDL, triglycerides, omega-3 fatty acids, polyphenols, antioxidants, because these are the molecular levers by which diet influences health. Where appropriate, I will also translate technical language into practical prescriptions you can test in your own kitchen. You should expect the discussion to be candid about limitations. Not every person will experience the same magnitude of change, and not every improvement in blood tests will be mirrored immediately by a subjective reduction in pain. Nevertheless, there is accumulating, and in many cases robust evidence, that modest, sustainable dietary shifts produce clinically meaningful results in a matter of weeks to months. Some interventions primarily alter lipid profiles. Others primarily modulate inflammatory signaling. The most powerful strategies combine both functions. For that reason, I have selected foods for this presentation not on the basis of anecdotal popularity or marketing hype, but on the basis of biochemical plausibility, reproducible findings from controlled trials, and their feasibility for people aged 35 to 70 who want actions that fit real life. It is also essential to frame expectations about safety and context. If you are taking prescription medications, statins, anticoagulants, or certain anti-inflammatory drugs, introducing concentrated sources of omega-3s, vitamin K-rich greens, or large quantities of certain herbal supplements should be discussed with your prescribing clinician. Diet modifies physiology. It does not operate in a vacuum. This series will aim to minimize risk by favoring whole foods and moderate portions, offering alternatives for dietary restrictions, and highlighting simple swaps that reduce calorie density while increasing nutrient quality. Let me offer a brief preview so you know what to watch for. Each of the 5 foods that follow has been selected because it addresses either cholesterol metabolism, systemic inflammation, or joint tissue preservation. Often, all 3 simultaneously. You will hear explanations of how each food interacts with lipoproteins, which inflammatory mediators it affects, and why these effects are particularly relevant as we age. You will also receive practical guidance, portion sizes that are effective yet attainable, culinary suggestions to preserve nutrient integrity, common mistakes to avoid, and realistic frequency recommendations. One last point of intrigue. One of the foods on the list is a very common household item, likely already in your refrigerator or pantry, and it exerts an unexpectedly rapid beneficial effect on joint discomfort for many people. I will reveal which item that is later in the sequence, and I will explain the mechanism that makes its impact comparatively fast. Before we move on to the personal stories and the mechanistic explanations, take a moment to commit to an experimental posture. Think of the next 4 weeks as an evidence-informed trial. Small, consistent changes in diet, replacing one habitual item with one of the foods I will recommend, are more likely to produce lasting benefit than a dramatic, unsustainable overhaul. The structure of this series is designed to support that approach. We begin with the reasoned argument, proceed to human examples, and then translate to daily practice. If you are ready, we will proceed to the narrative that brings these concepts to life. Real people, real results, and the turning points that made change possible. Before we enter the details of biochemistry and nutrients, I want to bring this discussion down to something tangible. A person, a life, a moment when change began. Meet John, age 67, a retired school teacher from Ohio. For decades he lived what he considered an ordinary life. A light breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, a sensible dinner. He never smoked, drank rarely, and believed his moderate habits protected him. Yet by the time he reached his mid-60s, his cholesterol readings had crept steadily upward. His doctor had prescribed a low-dose statin, and his knees had begun to ache persistently. He described it as a dull rust in his joints, never sharp, never severe, but always present. When John first visited a nutritional clinic, he was skeptical. He believed joint pain was an inevitable price of aging. But when he learned that inflammation drives both the accumulation of arterial plaque and the degradation of cartilage, curiosity replaced resignation. His clinician asked him to keep a food diary for 2 weeks. The pattern that emerged was typical: excessive refined carbohydrates, insufficient fiber, minimal omega-3 fats, and a near absence of polyphenol-rich foods. In other words, it was not overtly unhealthy, but it lacked the protective compounds that counteract oxidative stress and support joint tissue repair. John's first step was not radical. He replaced his breakfast cereal with half an avocado on whole grain toast and began eating oily fish twice a week instead of processed meats. He added a handful of walnuts on alternate days and a small serving of berries every morning. Nothing else changed. Within 6 weeks, his follow-up labs showed his LDL cholesterol down by 20 points, his HDL modestly up, and his C-reactive protein, a marker of systemic inflammation, reduced by almost a third. More telling than numbers, however, was his subjective experience. He described his knees as lighter. He could stand from a chair without bracing his hands, and his morning stiffness had shortened from 30 minutes to less than 10. This story is not presented as a miracle, but as evidence of the body's capacity to adapt. When provided with the right materials, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory lipids, micronutrients that support collagen synthesis, the body responds. Many viewers over 50 or 60 underestimate that potential because they have been conditioned to see aging as decline rather than adaptation. The science tells a different story. Our cells continue to regenerate. Our livers continue to remodel lipids. Our synovial membranes continue to produce lubricating fluid. These processes slow, but they do not vanish. The goal, then, is not youth restored, but function preserved and pain diminished. If you find yourself identifying with John, if stairs have become a cautious negotiation, or if your last blood test left you uneasy, know that the mechanisms behind his improvement are universal. Let us now examine the scientific foundation. Why cholesterol and joint pain often rise together after midlife, and how the right foods alter that shared pathway. Beginning around age 40, the efficiency of hepatic LDL receptors declines. These receptors are the gatekeepers that remove cholesterol particles from the bloodstream. When fewer are active, LDL accumulates. At the same time, oxidative stress produced by normal metabolism, pollution, stress hormones, and suboptimal diets modifies those LDL particles, transforming them into a form the body treats as a threat. The immune system responds with inflammation, sending white blood cells to engulf the damaged lipids, creating foam cells that eventually form plaque in the arteries. Inflammation, once chronic, becomes systemic. The same cytokines, tiny signaling molecules, that drive arterial inflammation also reach the synovial membranes of your joints. There, they accelerate the breakdown of collagen and cartilage. In laboratory models, the presence of oxidized LDL has been shown to increase production of enzymes that literally digest the tissue inside joints. In other words, the same metabolic fire that stiffens arteries also stiffens knees. Another factor is the gradual reduction of natural antioxidants and anti-inflammatory molecules with age. The body produces fewer endogenous compounds like glutathione and coenzyme Q10. This leaves tissues more vulnerable to oxidative attack. If the diet does not supply replacements, vitamin E, vitamin C, polyphenols, carotenoids, the equilibrium tips toward chronic inflammation. That is why dietary change is powerful. It reintroduces the raw materials your body once produced abundantly on its own. The foods we will discuss, avocado, fatty fish, cruciferous vegetables, berries, and nuts, operate precisely on these mechanisms. They enhance hepatic clearance of LDL, provide anti-inflammatory lipids, deliver antioxidants that neutralize free radicals, and supply minerals required for collagen repair. Each food, independently, offers measurable benefit. Together, they form a pattern of resilience. When people adopt this pattern, clinical outcomes follow: reduced cholesterol, lower blood pressure, fewer inflammatory markers, and improved joint mobility. This is not theoretical. Meta-analyses in reputable journals have documented reductions in LDL cholesterol of 8 to 15% from dietary interventions emphasizing monounsaturated fats and omega-3 sources. Trials using cruciferous vegetables demonstrate decreases in inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha. Studies on berries reveal improved endothelial function, the flexibility of your blood vessels, and decreased oxidative damage to lipoproteins. At this point in the video, if you are finding this information valuable, I encourage you to pause for a moment and subscribe to this channel. Subscribing ensures that you receive future updates on practical strategies just like this: nutrition explained without exaggeration, rooted in data, and translated into steps you can take immediately. This channel exists to help you build a foundation of health that endures, regardless of your age or medical history. Returning to our discussion, it is important to understand that small shifts accumulate. Every meal that replaces refined carbohydrates with a source of healthy fat, every serving of greens that displaces a processed option, quietly alters your internal chemistry. Over days and weeks, those tiny corrections add up to systemic change. What often surprises people is that relief from joint discomfort can precede changes in laboratory values. You may feel looser, less inflamed, before your next blood test confirms improvement. That is not coincidence. It is physiology catching up to biochemistry. Let us begin our practical exploration with a food that has long been misunderstood: the avocado. For decades, it was dismissed as too fatty, an indulgence best avoided by anyone concerned about cholesterol. That perception could not be more inaccurate. The fats in avocado are predominantly monounsaturated, specifically oleic acid, the same heart-protective compound that gives olive oil its celebrated reputation. Unlike saturated fats that elevate LDL, monounsaturated fats improve the ratio of HDL to LDL and, perhaps more importantly, reduce the oxidation of LDL particles. Remember, oxidized LDL is the true culprit in arterial plaque formation. By stabilizing these particles, avocado quietly shifts your lipid profile towards safety. But its benefits extend far beyond cholesterol. Within its pale green flesh lie phytosterols, plant compounds structurally similar to cholesterol that compete for absorption in the digestive tract. When present, they effectively block some of the cholesterol from food and bile from entering the bloodstream. Clinical trials have demonstrated that regular avocado consumption can lower total cholesterol by up to 17% without medication. Its soluble fiber content further aids this process by binding excess bile acids and promoting their excretion. For joints, avocado offers another gift: anti-inflammatory compounds known as carotenoids and polyhydroxylated fatty alcohols. These molecules inhibit the same pathways, specifically the COX and LOX enzymes, that conventional painkillers target, though in a gentler and safer manner. They also deliver vitamin E, a potent antioxidant that protects cell membranes from the oxidative damage that worsens inflammation. When you combine these effects, you find a food that nourishes the cardiovascular system and soothes the musculoskeletal one at the same time. How should it be consumed? Half an avocado daily is sufficient for most adults. It can replace spreads like butter or mayonnaise, be sliced atop salads, or mashed with a squeeze of lemon and a pinch of salt. The acidity preserves its nutrients and prevents browning. For those managing weight, consider it as a substitution, not an addition. Replace. Do not simply pile on calories. The texture of avocado pairs beautifully with tomatoes, leafy greens, or even scrambled eggs, delivering satiety that curbs cravings for less healthy snacks. It is worth emphasizing that the body responds not just to nutrients, but to patterns. The habitual replacement of refined fats with monounsaturated sources recalibrates metabolism over time. Within weeks, many people report improved energy, steadier digestion, and a subtle but noticeable reduction in joint stiffness. Scientific explanations aside, the experience of feeling less inflamed becomes its own motivation. If you begin nowhere else, begin with the avocado: simple, available, and physiologically powerful. The second food on our list takes us to the sea. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, trout, represent one of nature's most concentrated sources of omega-3 fatty acids, the biological counterweight to the inflammation that drives both high cholesterol and joint degradation. To understand why, picture inflammation as a line of dominoes. An initial signal, often from stress or poor diet, triggers a cascade of enzymes and chemical messengers that amplify each other. Omega-3s, specifically EPA and DHA, intervene at multiple points in that chain, reducing the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines like IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha, while promoting the synthesis of resolvins and protectins, molecules that actively turn off inflammation once it has served its purpose. This biochemical balancing act has direct consequences for cholesterol metabolism. Omega-3s reduce hepatic production of very low-density lipoprotein, VLDL, the precursor to triglycerides and LDL, while simultaneously increasing the size and buoyancy of LDL particles, making them less likely to lodge in arterial walls. They also modestly raise HDL, enhancing the removal of cholesterol from tissues. In practical terms, regular consumption of fatty fish can lower triglycerides by 20 to 30% and significantly improve the inflammatory profile in as little as 8 weeks. For the joints, the evidence is equally compelling. Studies in patients with rheumatoid and osteoarthritis show that omega-3 supplementation decreases morning stiffness, reduces tenderness, and can even allow lower doses of anti-inflammatory medication. The mechanism is systemic. Reduced inflammation in the bloodstream leads to calmer joint environments. Cartilage breakdown slows, and synovial fluid regains its lubricating properties. People often describe the effect not as a dramatic cure, but as an ease of motion, a sense that their body moves more smoothly. The practical question, of course, is how to incorporate these fish safely and affordably. 2 to 3 servings per week are sufficient for most adults. Choose options lower on the food chain: sardines, anchovies, mackerel, to minimize mercury exposure. If fresh fish is unavailable, canned varieties packed in water or olive oil retain most of their nutrients. Avoid frying, which destroys omega-3s. Instead, bake, grill, or steam lightly. For those who prefer plant-based sources, flaxseed and chia provide alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, a precursor to omega-3s, though conversion efficiency is limited. Combining plant sources with modest fish intake or high-quality supplements yields the best results. Beyond chemistry, there is a psychological dimension to dietary change. Incorporating fish often introduces color, aroma, and ritual to meals, features that transform eating from obligation to pleasure. That pleasure matters because sustainable habits depend on enjoyment. The Mediterranean populations, whose diets are rich in these foods, exhibit not only lower rates of cardiovascular disease, but also higher reported life satisfaction. They eat slowly, socially, and with gratitude, reinforcing the very physiological calm that omega-3s promote. As this series progresses, remember that each food amplifies the effects of the others. The avocado's monounsaturated fats complement the omega-3s of fish, stabilizing cell membranes and facilitating anti-inflammatory signaling. Together, they begin to rebuild the internal environment in which your arteries and joints can thrive. In the next chapters, we will introduce the power of the green cruciferous vegetables and the surprising potency of berries, two plant groups that cleanse, protect, and rejuvenate from within. We now turn to the quiet healers of the plant kingdom, cruciferous vegetables. These are the greens and florets you know well: broccoli, kale, cabbage, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. Their outward simplicity hides a biochemical sophistication that borders on remarkable. When these vegetables are chopped or chewed, they release sulfur-containing compounds known as glucosinolates. Inside your body, these convert into isothiocyanates, the most studied of which is sulforaphane. This molecule is one of the most potent natural activators of your body's own detoxification and antioxidant systems. Sulforaphane stimulates the NRF2 pathway, a master switch that turns on hundreds of genes responsible for neutralizing free radicals and repairing oxidative damage. In practical terms, it lowers the burden of oxidative stress that drives both cholesterol oxidation and joint inflammation. The same mechanism that prevents LDL from turning toxic in your arteries also protects collagen in your joints from being broken down by enzymes triggered by oxidative stress. This dual protection is rare in nutrition, one molecular family acting on two seemingly unrelated conditions. Cruciferous vegetables also contain vitamin K, which plays a subtle but crucial role in calcium regulation. Adequate vitamin K keeps calcium in your bones, where it belongs, and out of your arteries, where it can harden vessels and exacerbate cholesterol-related problems. They supply folate, vitamin C, and a range of polyphenols that together enhance endothelial function, improving circulation to every tissue, including those delicate joint structures that depend on steady blood flow for nourishment. In terms of practicality, these vegetables work best when lightly cooked, steamed, or sautéed, because heat releases nutrients without destroying the beneficial enzymes entirely. A cup per meal is an excellent goal, though even 3 to 4 servings per week confer measurable benefits. Drizzle with olive oil or a slice of avocado to enhance absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Avoid overcooking, which not only dulls flavor, but depletes potency. There is an elegance in simplicity. A plate of steamed broccoli with a touch of lemon juice provides antioxidants, minerals, and fiber in perfect proportion. Over time, those consistent servings contribute to lower inflammation, cleaner arteries, and stronger connective tissues. If you combine these vegetables with the omega-3 rich fish and monounsaturated fats already discussed, you create a biochemical environment profoundly unfavorable to disease. You give your body the materials to repair and the calm to recover. As we move to the next food group, remember that the strategy is synergy. No single food is a miracle. The miracle lies in their cooperation. And few cooperate more effectively with greens than the vibrant, antioxidant-packed fruits that follow. Enter the berries: blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, the jewels of the nutritional world. Their beauty is more than aesthetic, it is biochemical. The pigments that give them color, called anthocyanins, are among the most powerful antioxidants known. They protect cholesterol from oxidation, preserve the elasticity of blood vessels, and dampen the inflammatory processes that erode joint cartilage. When scientists measure oxidative stress in the bloodstream after a meal, the addition of berries produces one of the most dramatic reductions ever recorded in a whole food. In one study, just a single serving of blueberries reduced oxidation of LDL cholesterol by 27% within hours. Over weeks, regular intake of berries improves endothelial function, meaning your arteries expand and contract more effectively, reducing strain on the heart. For joint health, these same compounds interrupt the molecular chatter that provokes swelling and pain. They stabilize collagen, support connective tissue regeneration, and decrease the activity of enzymes that digest cartilage. Beyond their molecular virtues, berries bring a sensory joy often missing from healthy eating. Their sweetness comes with fiber, not refined sugar. Their flavor encourages consistency. Half a cup a day is enough, fresh, frozen, or even freeze-dried, as long as they contain no added sugar. Blend them into yogurt, scatter them over oatmeal, or simply eat them as they are. Consistency matters more than creativity. The last of the 5 foods, the quiet architects of long-term resilience, are nuts and seeds. Small though they appear, they deliver an intricate balance of healthy fats, plant sterols, minerals, and fibers that reinforce every system we have discussed. Almonds, walnuts, flaxseed, chia, each contributes a slightly different profile. Their combined effect is to lower LDL cholesterol by blocking its absorption, increase HDL, and provide magnesium and zinc essential for bone and joint health. Magnesium deserves special mention. It participates in more than 300 enzymatic reactions, including those responsible for muscle relaxation and energy production. Low magnesium levels correlate with both higher inflammation and greater perception of pain. A small handful of nuts daily, around 30 grams, satisfies much of your requirement. For those concerned about calories, replace processed snacks rather than adding nuts atop an existing diet. Raw or lightly toasted varieties are best. Avoid those coated with sugar or heavy salt. The synergy now becomes clear. Avocado provides monounsaturated fats to stabilize cholesterol. Fish deliver omega-3s to quell inflammation. Cruciferous vegetables detoxify and protect. Berries neutralize oxidative damage. Nuts and seeds reinforce the structure. Together they form a network of nourishment that addresses the twin challenges of aging, cholesterol imbalance, and joint deterioration at their biological roots. At this stage, it is worth pausing to reflect on what these foods collectively achieve. They do not act as isolated remedies, but as interconnected signals to the body that the environment has changed, that inflammation is no longer needed, that repair can resume. Over time, as these messages are repeated meal after meal, the results accumulate. Lower cholesterol, easier movement, steadier energy, and often a quiet astonishment that such profound change emerged from such ordinary foods. For those just beginning this journey, patience is essential. The body that took decades to build imbalance will not transform overnight. Yet improvements often arrive sooner than expected. Within 3 weeks of consistent change, laboratory markers begin to shift. Within 6, joint discomfort lessens. Within 3 months, many people describe a new baseline. Less pain, more vitality, a sense of equilibrium restored. Science provides the explanation, but your daily choices provide the outcome. Food remains the most accessible form of self-care we possess. It is also, paradoxically, the most neglected. To those watching now, I urge you not to view these recommendations as restrictions, but as reinforcements. They are tools to reclaim comfort, strength, and confidence in your own body. As a final reminder, if you have not already subscribed to this channel, please do so now. This community is built on clarity, not confusion, information that respects your intelligence and honors your effort. Each week, we share evidence-based guidance on how to eat, move, and live in ways that sustain vitality at every age. Your subscription ensures you stay informed and supported. Allow me to close with a reflection, not a lecture. Aging is not a failure of biology, but a masterpiece of adaptation. The same mechanisms that once fueled growth now devote themselves to maintenance and repair. Our task is simply to assist them, to supply the raw materials and remove the obstacles. Cholesterol and joint pain are signals, not verdicts. They tell us where imbalance has settled and where attention is needed. Through deliberate, compassionate nutrition, we can quiet those signals and return the body to harmony. Imagine for a moment the cumulative impact of small acts, the breakfast that replaces sugar with avocado, the lunch that swaps processed meat for grilled salmon, the dinner brightened by broccoli and a handful of berries. Each meal is a vote for vitality. Each day is a modest rebellion against the narrative that age equals decline. So take what you have learned here and apply it, not as a temporary experiment, but as an enduring practice. The foods described today are not exotic or rare. They are humble, familiar, and waiting in your local market. In their simplicity lies their strength. Your body recognizes them, welcomes them, and responds with gratitude measurable, not just in lab results, but in the freedom of movement, the steadiness of energy, and the quiet satisfaction of health restored.